Welcome to the Tone Lounge Podcast, the definitive music industry and gear podcast with Jonathan Gilmet and Frank Fleckenstein.
What's up, guys? Good morning and welcome to the Tone Lounge Podcast. It is Epiphone.
Epiphone.
It is Epiphone. It is Epiphone number 26. It is episode.
That should be a model.
It is episode number 26. My name is Frank. I'm screwing up the intro line. And with me today is the Honorable Duke of Voxington, Jonathan Gilmet. Not screwing up because he's not doing the intro line.
Well, you didn't ask me.
Why did you ask me to do it now? This episode, well, first of all, some housekeeping. Here's some housekeeping on a personal level. After pausing FFX pedals for a little while due to health and private reasons, I'm slowly picking this up again. It's gonna be super low volume in the beginning, but I want to do it. I definitely want to do it, and it's gonna take some time. Until I'm gonna get back to like the level, so to speak, the level that I was before. So yeah, that's one thing. And if you guys are interested, just stay close to me on social media, FFX Pedals, and on the website. I still have some remaining stock, and some discounted stock as well for stuff that's like running out. So if you're interested, head over to ffxpedals.com. Then the other housekeeping part, something we just spoke about because I was very surprised to see that this morning. If you guys follow us on YouTube, especially on YouTube, you know that we always upload the full episode. And some of these episodes are very, very long because sometimes we have a lot to talk about and topics go into deep and etc., etc. So what we do is we normally also cut them into smaller chunks and kind of like cut out certain topics out of those conversations. Meaning, for example, we talked with Thomas Blug about his work with the AMP1 and his work as a product designer in general. And one of the topics that came up was that Blackstar amplification kind of copied some of the ingredients of the AMP1 and then used them to make the amped one. That's one of the videos that we cut out. And I was very surprised to see this morning that out of nowhere, this video totally blew up. And a lot of people commented on it. A lot of people gave it a thumbs up. And yeah, it kind of caught me by surprise. But I'm also very happy that it blew up. And that's my personal opinion. I have no beef with Blackstar, but when I saw what happened back then, I thought it was a very shitty move. And it's good that more people know about these things. And then on the other hand, more people know about Thomas and his original creation.
Absolutely. And what's also cool is that people discover the video and we also get to grow the channel at the same time because we've had a significant amount of new subscribers. So to all of you who just recently subscribed to the channel, welcome. And we're going to be making more content like this in the coming weeks. But the thing is, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping too, because I'm moving from Belgium back to Canada, my homeland. And that means there's going to be a few weeks there where we're not going to be putting out regular content. And if you watch us on a more regular basis, you might have seen that we're kind of spreading out the videos, but that's due to the fact that Frank has got some stuff going on. I have some stuff going on. We're really adamant about keeping this thing going. But the thing is, sometimes we have to put it to the side and prioritize other things. But we love doing this podcast and just shooting the shit, as you will. And as soon as I'm settled back in Canada, we're going to be doing this more regularly. But now it's going to be a little different for Frank and I, just because we're not going to be in the same time zone. But that's not going to affect any of you, because we're just going to keep putting it out at the same bat time and same bat channel.
Yes, exactly. And it's one of these things in life, somebody moves, somebody needs to change things due to, private family reasons, whatever. But, thanks to this thing called the internet, collaboration is possible. And the only thing for us that's going to change is the time when we record it. Because for you, it's going to be somewhat morning, and for me, it's going to be somewhat afternoon, early evening. And it's just a coordination thing. But same thing that I have in my head is like I'm really enjoying doing this podcast, and I definitely want to continue doing it. We also, next week's podcast is also going to have a guest. We're not going to say who that is yet, but we're going to have an interesting guest, someone who is definitely well known in the YouTube community, in the gear YouTube community, and sometimes can be a controversial character. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Other than that, and before we get into the main topic, I'd like to share a couple of news with you. So let me share my screen. And you tell me if you can see this.
I can see it.
Okay. Here's the first thing that... So if you have watched or listened to last week's episode, or the last episode number 25, we talked about a little bit about the history of Marshall, and the current state of things. We also discovered that only 5% of their annual business actually comes out of amp manufacture, and the other 95% that come out of lifestyle products and headphones and Bluetooth speakers and all that stuff. Yeah. And the CEO of the company was interviewed, and he said, we have some stuff coming, and you should really look out and stay close to us and blah 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 blah. And he said all these things, and I kind of said, well, okay, I'm looking forward to this, but I guess it's going to be some kind of super expensive limited edition, some kind of thing. And guess what happened? What happened 10 hours ago?
You were right.
I was right. And Marshall celebrates Celestion's 100th anniversary with limited edition amp. So it's not even an anniversary that is Marshall related. To some extent, because they use Celestion speakers, and Celestion also is originally a UK company. Yeah. But it's like, okay, so we're celebrating Celestion's 100th anniversary with a limited edition amp. And so what this is all about. Features a handcrafted artisanal 1x12 inch. This is a 1x12? Okay. 1x12 inch speaker loaded with ECC 83 and how is this is it just me, or is this weirdly phrased?
It's weirdly phrased because it sounds like the speaker is loaded with guitar
ECC 83
tubes.
And okay. Recalling the legacy and sound of Celestion's first speakers built for electric guitars in late 50s and early 60s, the Celestion 100 amp is a display of the long-standing collaboration between the two companies. This collector's piece, has been handcrafted in the UK, is available for a limited run of just 100 units. So it's essentially a JTM, 30 watts, and... okay. And the Celestion 100, so that's the name of the amp. The Celestion 100 is loaded with two ECC 83 preamp valves and 5881 power amp valves. Nothing too out of the ordinary here, other that it kind of looks nice. It's like with the optics on this, they look really good. Mm-hmm. What else? Wow. 3,000 euros. Oh,
Chump
no.
change.
$3,000. But I assume it's going to be the same in in euros and
roughly.
and-
yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. It's kind of what I expected. It's you need to watch out because we are going to do great things, and what they do is a limited edition head for 3,000 or limited edition mini stack, because it's actually a mini stack. It's not even a half stack. It's a mini stack. So 1x12 cab and a small head for 3K.
How do you see this, Frank? Do you see it more like this is less about making a product for people that are actually asking it, and more like what's the word I'm looking for? More like advertising for Celestion. Like, hey, we're just doing 100 of these. They're going to be hand wired, fairy dust bullshit and all that stuff. And here we go. And we're just doing this to commemorate our association with Celestion. So it's more marketing as opposed to actually catering to people that were asking for such a product.
Yeah. To me, that's clearly a marketing move. I don't see, and I haven't heard anyone saying, "Boy, it would be great if someone made a JDM 45 reissue with a 1x12 and that features an artisanal Celestion speaker."
What the fuck does that even mean? Artisanal.
Is
Is there like some guy with like... there's like this guy with like a big douchebag fucking hippie beard, and he's got long hair and flowers in his hair, and he smells of musky lavender, and he's like
probably
got this weird accent that no one knows where the fuck he's from, and he's like making this shit, and he's super weird listening to like throat singing from whatever country in the back, and he's like fucking high on DMT or some shit. It's like, what? Artisanal? Is that like the new word that's replacing boutique, which just means a shop in French, in boutique?
Yeah.
It's like artisanal.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Artisanal
Yeah,
speaker.
I'm not sure.
Just trying to imagine this. Oh.
The thing is, the guy who kind of, it's obviously that this is a marketing move. It doesn't look like something that people wanted or have requested. And is it good? Is it going to sound good? Probably. JTM.
I'm sure it's good.
JTM is a good sounding. Is a good sounding amp. Is it necessary? I don't know. I'm not sure. But it's fun that it's fun that 2 weeks ago we spoke about this, and I said I think they're gonna pull something like that, and then they do, and it was so obvious. It was just well, okay. That's Marshall related news.
Yeah, that's Marshall.
That's Marshall. Then here's another company that likes to make money of important guitar players in history.
Mm-hmm.
So Gibson introduces the Jeff Beck Yardburst. Because
that's a weird word.
Because Yardbird. Yeah.
And it's a burst. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Clever.
Gotcha. Clever marketing. Introducing the Jeff Beck Yardburst 1959 Les Paul, a tribute to the guitar legend Jeff Beck. This limited run includes a Lifton hardshell case and exclusive case candy. Only 130 handmade guitars available. And that's like if you read the first sort of line and everything, that's like, a tribute to the guitar legend. Yes. Okay. Limited run. Okay. Yes. Includes a Lifton hardshell case and exclusive case candy. How about you talk about the great guitar first? Hey, here's a great limited edition guitar. We put a lot of work into it. And then afterwards you can mention all the other shit. You know, and you can say, oh, and also it comes with a blah, 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 deluxe custom handmade hard shell case, an exclusive case candy, including chocolate, you know, from the Swiss Alps. Handmade, artisanal.
There you go. Artisan boutique chocolate. I want to try that.
This guitar comes with artisanal, handmade chocolate from the Swiss Alps, done by people who've done it for over 200 years.
Yes,
and
it's
they're
a
still
family
the same
tradition.
They're still the same
Family
people.
tradition. There's so much fucking word soup in marketing that means nothing. I know why they do it, just because people associate these keywords with certain, you know, it evokes certain emotions and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes companies are just like, it seems like they're just in a like random word generator and they're just throwing fucking random words at it. It's like artisanal, handmade, handcrafted, long tradition, family owned, blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, okay. Tell me about the fucking guitar. You know,
Yeah, exactly. So, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Apparently, they pulled his wife into this because it's here. Jeff was enormously proud to have a guitar, to have owned the original of this guitar, says Sandra Beck. He was aware and fully supportive of the amazing job and love that Gibson Custom provided to create this instrument, and would have hoped that this guitar will give hours of pleasure to those who play it. And then they go on about, they talk about the guitar, which is good. They mention again, it's 130 pieces. Then Cesar, the CEO, talks about Jeff and how he influenced people. Yes, Jeff Beck was, I mean, if you hear the testimonial of people who love Jeff Beck, those are people who then influenced other people, you know? So then we have a couple of images. Okay, it's a Les Paul. Was featured on 2 albums, probably on more. Now I'm just looking for the price.
Mm.
There's nothing that says anything about the price.
For more information.
For more information, visit Gibson.com. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's see how much this motherfucker costs. $10K. Oh, it's already sold out. What?
Well, there was only 130 of them, so of course. But let's be honest. 10,000 for Gibson? That is not that bad, because I've seen guitars that are not okay. Like, yeah, it's an actually okay price, because I've seen like other Gibsons that are not like special or anything go for as much or maybe even more sometimes. So yeah, well, I mean, I couldn't afford it for sure. Like, there's no way I could put 10K on a fucking guitar. But for anyone that has that kicking around and sees this and goes, "Hey, I want this guitar," yeah, I think it's
the thing. So,
price.
okay, 10K is not too bad, and that's probably because this looks like a new guitar. It's not a Murphy aged or Relic or aged or whatever. So this is like a new
I'll be
guitar.
right back.
No worries. So this is like a new guitar. It's not something that where you pay a lot of money because, you know, somebody dinged it up and, you know, reliced it. But other than that, what does it? Custom bucker. Okay. Probably wired for this guitar, because I don't see anything that says that it's a specific model. Handmade by the expert luthiers at the Gibson Custom Shop in Nashville. Okay. Fine with me. 10K is actually not too much. 130 pieces, and they're already sold out. Here's my sort of pet peeve with it. Every time I see Jeff Beck and I look at videos from Jeff Beck, the things I see are either a Strat or a Tele. You know, like all the all the great performances, I don't see him with a Les Paul. So for me, in a way, it is kind of sneaky to me. I know that he played Les Pauls, and there are also, as they say here, and they're right, obviously. He has played numerous albums with the Les Paul, but the stuff that he's really known for and the tone that people associate him with is definitely based on instruments made by the company with a big F. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's just a thought here, but do you think sometimes companies, they want to capitalize on an artist?
Oh yeah.
Even if it's like, even if he featured one time with one pedal or one guitar, and then they're like, oh, this is the model, and everyone else is going like, oh, he used that? Oh, okay, then I'll buy it because I'm a fan. But for myself, it's like, I know a bit about Jeff Beck, but I always associate him with a Strat and doing that whammy bar thing he does that almost sounds a slide. So when I look at this, I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen him play a Gibson. I'm sure he has played a shit ton of fucking guitars, but I wasn't really aware of this one. So I wouldn't call it a cash grab, but I just wonder if that's what companies do. They try to squeeze that name into profit somehow, just as much as they can. It's like, even if the guy had it in his collection but never used it, because it belonged to him, they want to make a model of it. I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but
to some extent,
what it seems
I think, to some extent, it's kind of a cash grab, and it's and it becomes legitimate because they pulled his wife into the or maybe not pulled. I don't know she obviously knows the original, and then they put a statement here from her, so it gives the whole thing sort of legitimacy.
It feels more like, when you read that, you get less the impression that they are going out of their way to capitalize on his name. It seems more like a collaboration between his estate and them, so it seems more fair play. And if that's the case, if she can make some money from this, there's any kickback, I mean, that's awesome. It's like she lost her husband. If she can keep making money, I mean, I have no objections to that whatsoever.
No. If and that's something. And there are people making money and people making money. If you, I once read, and I don't know I don't remember the source, but it was about the most, like the richest guitar players, dead or alive. And if Hendrix was alive today, he would be the richest guitar player on this fucking planet.
Oh, no doubt.
Because and his family, the Hendrix family, the Hendrix estate, they made a lot of money. They really made a lot of money with his name and everything that he sort of influenced down the road. So, fun fact, the richest guitar player alive today is the guitar player from ABBA.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that a few episodes back. Yeah. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's not Steve Vai. Yeah, it's not Steve Vai. It's not like Steve Lukather or someone like that. It's
Richie Zambora. I always thought it would be Richie Zambora because Bon Jovi sold so many albums.
That's right.
Like millions and millions of albums. And their stuff is all over the place. It was translated into so many languages. Bon Jovi, I mean, the funniest thing about traveling through South America and being in a bus and listening to radio is listening to Bon Jovi's Always in Spanish. Or what's the other guy? Eros Ramazzotti, the Italian singer. Like in Italy and Europe, like huge, especially in the 90s. He was like one of the like big sort of rock pop stars. He was only singing Italian. Suddenly I hear a song and he's singing it in Spanish. I'm in a bus in Chile and I was like, why the hell did they translate? Like, why would they sing it? Yeah, because it sells better. Just sells better in countries where English is not like the strongest language everybody speaks or understands. I mean, they know the song, but people want to be able to sing along, and it's more difficult in English than it is in Spanish. So, suddenly you sit there and you hear like Always on Spanish. It's like very weird.
Oh, well.
Moving on to the next topic, which is everything becomes more budget, which makes sense in times like these. So ESP thought they kind of bring this even further, like to the next level, and come up with guitars like the LTD sort of series, or the LTD brand was always related with like the entry level stuff. And their 200 series was always kind of like, okay, that's the cheap stuff. But actually, it doesn't look that cheap anymore. So let's see. ESP has announced a launch of 6 new additions to the brand's well-known LTD series. And it's all 200 series. So it's like the EC, which is the Les Paul sort of guitar. The M, which is the like modern contemporary Strat style guitar. The TE, which is a Telecaster. And the thing that I like about these guitars is, and there are not many companies that can pull that off at that price point. They look good. Yeah, they really look good. Like just the looks. This looks great. It's a great finish. This is a great finish. It's like there's nothing to, you look at it and it's like, makes sense for $400. I mean, $400. It's like for $400, 20 years ago, you would get a Squier Strat, and for the most part, it wasn't very good.
Yeah,
at all. You would pay 50 euros less for a Yamaha Pacifica, the Pacifica 112, which was like a serious contender, and it was like I think I sold more Yamaha Pacificas than any other guitar in my time in retail because it just worked very well. But that's what you got back then for like the $400 sort of price range. Now, I mean,
my opinion on this is that I think that we've sent so much work to people in the Far East that after doing this day in and day out for years and years and years, they've got better trained, they got better equipment, because they're doing like massive loads of guitars, OEM stuff for other companies. I don't think they have a choice but to get good at what they do. It's like, if you do this day in and day out for 20 years, of course you're going to get better. And if they got really good managers, floor managers, and, head of the companies that are really investing in their employees' training and trying to get some really good materials that don't cost them too much, but can make a profit at the same time. If you look at all that, I mean, of course, these companies are getting really fucking good at what they're doing. Just look at right now, if you go to any store and you grab like one of the higher end Fender, like let's say Mexican versus the lower end Fender American, that line is starting to get really blurry. Yeah. You're at a point where you're like, okay, so what's the resale value on like these Fender Mexicans versus the Americans on the used market? Like $100, $200 difference. So it's getting really hard to justify by buying the low end of the American stuff when the Mexican stuff, the higher end stuff, is so fucking good for the price point.
Yeah.
So I think this is genius because I tend now to play more budget friendly guitars just because I like to mod them. I don't feel so fucking good, modding a guitar that's worth thousands of dollars because then the resale value goes down drastically.
Oh, yeah.
But if you grab these guitars and you love the neck, you love the feel and everything, and someone breaks into your house, steals it, yeah, you're going to be pissed. But I mean, it wasn't 1 out of 100,
Yeah.
It
wasn't a 130 pieces only Jeff Beck.
Exactly. So you could go back to a music store and order another one just like it, or look on the used market for one from the same year. So you're going to be, in the vicinity of what you had before. And I like that. I actually, like I just showed you not that long ago, I have an ESP Eclipse. This is one of the custom shops one from 1997. And ESP makes great guitars if you're into that. So they're not as bulky as a Gibson. They don't have the same neck profile as a Gibson. It's more modern.
Yes.
And what I like about this company is that they know their market. They know who buys these guitars. This is not made for someone that plays jazz. It's not made for someone that plays country. These are like rock, metal, and kind of like Schecter knows their audience. These guys know their audience too. So yeah, those guitars look great.
The other thing that always struck me with ESP is that was a couple of years back, but I once took a look at the artist roster of ESP, like worldwide, and they had so many fucking artists. And like everywhere in the world, they had artists in the US, in Europe, they had artists in Japan. And then if you look at obviously Japan is like, since they're a Japanese company, it's a big market. And then you look at some of the artists and you're like, I've never heard of this guy. Like, who the hell is this band? Okay, let's look it up on YouTube. And you see like arenas full of people and this guy playing on stage. You're like, oh, apparently they're a big deal. And I think ESP was one of the companies that really kind of struck me when it came to, marketing through artists. I don't know if that's still as huge as it was before, because we all know that a lot of companies have kind of trimmed this down in a way. But it's still big. So and it's still a big company.
Yep.
All right, and then I have another one. Our beloved Silver Sky, our favorite setting guitar, has a new triple humbucker model, which was kind of funky. So the PRS once had a model that was called the NF3, and it had like 3 mini humbuckers. So humbuckers that essentially look like single coils size-wise, but they have 2 coils. And so now they took a Silver Sky body and a Silver Sky neck and made an SE version of that NF3. Let me just... For some reason, I can't scroll on this page. No, I can. So, PRS John Mayer's Silver Sky model is widely popular. True. One of the best-selling guitars of the past couple of years. And has thus far been issued as both a regular old PRS series alongside an SE model. Now PRS is upping their Silver Sky game once again with a brand new, capable of chunkier riffs, PRS SE NF3. Which brings a trio of PRS narrow field, that's why they're called NF3, is narrow field, pickups. They then feature a poplar body, 22 fret bolt-on maple neck, and the choice of either rosewood or maple fretboard. Is there an image of this thing somewhere? Let's see. There. This looks great.
Yeah, it
I
does.
have to say.
Yeah.
This looks really good. Is there another image somewhere? No, that's just a guy.
Just
Get
a
one
guy.
here. Where can you get it? At Sweetwater, of course. So what do they have? They have this one looks nice. They have an orange one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that does look good.
But the body doesn't look 100% Silver Sky. To me, it looks a little like the shape is a bit different.
Yeah, it looks a little less like a Strat and kind of reminds me of what's the other Fender model they came out with?
The lead?
Exactly.
Fender lead?
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
You got it.
1979 to 82. They made the Fender lead.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me more, like in the shape, the way it's made.
Yeah. Okay, and then what's this? This is ice blue metallic. Nice. This one.
I like that one.
Yeah, you have to hand it to them. The finishes always look great with those PRS guitars, even with the SE models. And this one actually has decent tuners as well. I remember that the Silver Sky, the SE Silver Sky, has sort of plastic buttons at the tuners, which is kind of disappointing. And as always, and that's something I like about Sweetwater, they have like different guitars, like different serial numbers and different weights, and you can choose the one you want.
Yeah,
this is like, I haven't seen this anywhere else. No. You get it with individual guitars, but with guitars from the same series, that's a lot of effort because you have to unpack the whole thing, weigh it, and put all that stuff into the database. So,
but consider, like, you're selling these online, you give that information, there's probably far less returns on the instrument that way. Because if someone says, hey, my buddy has the same guitar and I just tried mine and mine's like a pound heavier than his, what gives? Well, if you can choose the weight and you get more details on it, there's far less returns, so it's less costly for them. It's fucking brilliant. More people should do that.
Yeah. Here it says, the neck and the neck body, neck body assembly were born of the SE Silver Sky originally and refined with the SE CE and Swamp Ash Special. That's what it reminds me about. The Swamp Ash Special also has that kind of shape. So in a way, it is a brand new guitar that is built on ideas spanning decades and reaching to the very cutting edge of our current engineering and design philosophies. Yeah, okay, blah blah blah. And the price point is great, $800, man. Yeah. $800 for a guitar that is very close to, a PRS. Sure, it's made in Indonesia, but so much stuff's made in Indonesia, and so many guitars are made in Indonesia that are more expensive. There are guitars that cost around 1,300 euros or dollars, and they're also made in Indonesia. So it's not an argument.
Aren't guitars like Strandberg made in Indonesia?
Yeah.
Yeah, that and the Dingwall
and those are
basses?
some of those go for 1,600 plus.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're great instruments, where they're made kind of becomes irrelevant a bit if you think about it, because if it's made by someone that's super competent, the specs are up the wazoo, but it's made in Indonesia, the only thing you're going to think about is that, it probably costs less to produce than if it's made, let's say, in Wisconsin. But at the end of the day, for the person receiving the instrument, if the instrument is fucking stellar, I don't see a problem on where it's made. If it's made in Indonesia, but you pay $1,600, but it plays like a $200 guitar, that would be a fucking issue. Like, I'd be like, I'm getting ripped off. But if it plays like the price point,
Exactly. That's the thing. A couple of years back, where it was made would have been an issue because of climate and environmental conditions. But nowadays, you can inside a factory, like the ones that the modern factories, some of the modern factories in Indonesia, you can create a climate that that helps building instruments even in Indonesia, where generally you have like a very tropical climate and lots of rain during what we have here as summer. It's like their rain season, and everything becomes even more humid. So that's good. And the last news is something business related. And this in this case is Brexit related. And it's not like it's the first time I've heard this. I've heard this from other people inside our industry, but also from other industries. And especially people who are working in logistics. They've suffered a lot from Brexit, because from one day to the other, so look at one day you're just easy, going on the ferry with your truck, with your 35 ton truck, and you're bringing goods from A to B. Next day, suddenly you need a shit ton of forms, and you can't just pass the border as you wish. And at some point, at like certain hours of certain days, suddenly you're going to stand in line with like hundreds and hundreds of trucks, and things get delayed, things get more complicated. So although Brexit was sold to people as like the cure for the UK economy, and for the UK, we are going to be the engineers again of our own fate, and blah 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 blah. And there's one luthier, a UK luthier called Steve Toon, who slams the impact of Brexit and says, "My European sales have dropped by 50%.
That's massive.
Yeah, that's definitely massive. So I have not, to 100% transparent here, I've not heard of Toon guitars at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Never heard of them. I'm going to check them out afterwards. But apparently Steve Toon has recently spoke to the BBC about how Brexit has changed his business operations. And he says that Brexit has increased the time it takes to export his high-end guitars, and has shot up from 48 hours to 3 weeks. 3 weeks to ship something essentially from an island to European mainland. Furthermore, the cost of exporting has quadrupled from £60 to $240, with items frequently now arriving late and trashed. It's become actually quite difficult to trade. My European sales have dropped by 50%, he says. The situation hasn't been helped by the complex customs declaration couriers. That's what I was mentioning earlier, where, you have a shit ton of stuff to fill out.
Yeah.
They also have to pay tariffs on Toon's guitars, meaning many also refused his trade completely. That's something that I see a lot in my day job, where apparently people in the UK, although even some of them might have even voted for Brexit, they kind of forgot about it. And they forgot about the fact that whenever now they buy something from European mainland, they're subject to duties and taxes. It's not like you see a price and that's your price plus shipping. And a lot of people are like completely surprised. They buy a guitar from Music Store or from Product Thief or whatever, or from any other European retailer for that matter. It gets shipped, and in a lot of these websites, there's actually a note before checkout that says, please be aware that you are definitely you're definitely going to have to pay taxes and import duties upon arrival of the instrument. Apparently, people don't read anymore. And then the instrument arrives, and they're like, and UPS says, "Hey, I need 300 pounds from you." And they're like, "The fuck are you talking about? 300 pounds?" And then they explain to them that, import duties and taxes, and it's like, "No, I'm refusing. I'm refusing to pay this. Send it back."
Oh, yeah.
That's the loop, the loop, and the snake biting itself that this creates is absolutely terrible, because now it's going back. That means the return, the cost for the return shipments are on the sender, so the retailer has to pay for that.
Yeah.
And then the whole reversal of the import process and everything, so there's additional costs. And that same thing happens the other way around. So if I buy something from the UK, it's going to be without VAT, meaning it's going to arrive and I'm going to have to pay import taxes and duties. Difference is, I know what I'm doing and I know about it, and I calculate that DHL or UPS or whoever the carrier is going to notify me that, hey, please pay this so we can, deliver this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, what does he say again? The government and Brexiteers promised less red tape and that we would be in control. In reality, this has not transpired to be true, he tells Guitar.com. There is now more red tape. It has become very difficult for me to bring the specialist woods that I use in my guitars into the country, and my European suppliers tell me that they cannot get courier companies to bring these goods even with the correct paperwork. I am the only person working in my company, and I don't have the resources to employ a specialist freight forwarder, so I'm in a bit of a loss as to what to do. What I really want for a sensible government to look at ways of improving trade with Europe. Despite the issues that Brexit has caused, Toon adds that he doesn't believe the UK should rejoin the EU. Interesting. Though he voted Remain. He believes that on the basis that the country decided to leave, albeit by a small margin, there seems little point in jumping backwards and forwards by going back on the results of the referendum. Yeah, because people voted to leave, and going back would piss off the majority of the country, which has voted to leave. So.
Yeah. My personal experience with this was I had a company that I reached out to, and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in doing a demo for one of your pedals." And the guy was like, "Cool, I'll send you one." But he was in the UK, and I had brief understanding of the whole Brexit thing, but I didn't understand necessarily the taxes and everything that was behind it. So he sends me this pedal, and then I look at the price tag to get it out of customs. Like, what the fuck? It's almost like half the price of the pedal. What is this? So I got the pedal in, and then my wife is like, yeah, maybe don't do business with UK companies too much, because, the price tag is up there and you're not making a fuck ton of money out of YouTube. So maybe refrain from reaching out. But being the guy that I am, I still found some really cool UK companies. And I was like, it would be a shame not to reach out to them. So I did a few companies. They sent me some pedals, and every time, dude, I'd get nicked on that fucking import taxes, like the VAT you have to pay on that and everything. Then you look at it, you go, it's almost not worth buying from the UK, because you get hit with this excessive amount of money you have to pay for it. So then I try to imagine someone who's buying an amp or a guitar that's worth thousands of dollars, and then it gets over here and they freak out because that price is not what they thought, and then they send it back to the company who just worked on this fucking thing. Yeah, I could see that killing off a business really, really quick. So that's where I think that decision they made to part from the European Union and all that, is you really have to think about who gets hit the most. It's not the big companies, it's the small companies.
Yeah.
Those small companies that are making products from their own home, trying to sell to everybody. Now it's like, okay, I'm going to sell to some guy in Belgium, but the guy in Belgium just refused to pay the duties on it. So now they're sending it back to me, and I got to pay for this. What the fuck? So now they have to put that warning there because some people are not aware, or they disregard it. They forget about it. So yeah, it's tough times when a country makes a big decision like that. It's usually the small companies that get hit the hardest, and that's really unfortunate.
And a lot of that is some of these movements are like driven by like very, very different factors. In terms of the UK, I actually, and I mean, I like Europe. It's not like I don't like the European idea. I like the idea that we have open borders between countries, and I can go to Spain, and I'm not getting controlled because I'm a European citizen. I was still born and raised in Germany. I was born into that sort of value system and whatnot. But I also like the idea of being a European citizen with some of the privileges that you have being a European citizen. Essentially, that you can relocate anytime you want.
Yeah.
So I can, if I wanted to live in Spain because I like the weather better or like whatever, and I can actually work from Spain and all that. I'm just gonna go to Spain and pay my taxes there and live in Spain. If I want to go to live in Holland, Netherlands, Belgium, whatever, I can do that if I want to.
Yeah.
And that's a nice thing. Definitely. But I understand the UK, and I understand some of the people in the UK who wanted out of the EU because the European government in Brussels or Strasbourg, depending on where they are, because they relocate. That's one of the things. They relocate one time a month for 3 days with the entire fucking thing, and they go to Strasbourg. Nobody knows why. Nobody can tell you why they need to do that. Just to, vote on certain things. Somebody put that down, and they've calculated that this whole moving forth and back costs 180 million euros a year.
Seems fair.
To me, do you know what you can do with 180 million euros?
Oh, I know what I would do. With
Yes.
180.
Yes.
Oh.
And if I was a country, that where I look at deficits in education, I look at deficits in, taking care of the elderly, and all of these things. I know where I would put the money. So there are definitely a lot of things, and also European government tries to kind of make legislation and tries to kind of ignore the laws and even the constitutions of some of the individual sovereign countries. And a lot of the EU was trying to create laws for Europe that were like thrown out in constitutional courts of Germany, for example, where they were like, okay, fine, come send us your law and we look at it, and then it's like, no, against the constitution, bye. So, and this like being forced to adopt certain policies, that's why I understand that people want to leave the EU 100%.
Yeah.
But to promise people that things are going to be better afterwards, that was a huge mistake. Yeah. We have a similar situation. It's not as extreme anymore, but it's still there in Spain with Catalonia, where Catalonia wants to be independent from Spain, has wanted to be for a long time because they speak their own language, they want to have their own culture, and also there's a lot of money behind it because, similar to other countries, the regions kind of balance the money between them. So Catalonia makes a shit ton of money because there's lots of big companies there. They have a big port. It's generally a well situated place, so they make a lot of money. And all the money they don't need, they kind of balance and they give it to the regions in Spain where they have a deficit and they need money and they need funding. And also they don't want to pay that money anymore. So they're like, we want to be independent and everything. But there it's like ideology driven, because there you're like, we want to be independent from Spain because we want to speak our own language, we want our own culture, blah, 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 all these things.
Yeah.
But let's say tomorrow, here you go, Catalonia is independent. What's your currency going to be? Are you going to be a member of the EU right away? That's going to take time. What about the banks? What are you going to do with your banks? What are you going to do with all the big companies who went to Catalonia because it makes sense to go there? Do you think they're going to stay with this kind of uncertain situation? No, They're going to go. And first and foremost, which kind of football league is the FC Barcelona going to play in if you're not part of Spain anymore?
Yeah.
In your own? With 3 teams?
Yeah.
There you go. So it is, it's complicated.
Very, very. And I mean, we could make a whole podcast just about that, but then it would be more of a political podcast.
Oh yeah,
and less about gear.
I went so political there. I'm very sorry, but it's in a lot of cases it's a topic that really moves me, because on one hand I understand people that that want to live their own identity and everything. That's all fine with me, but they only think from 12 o'clock to noon. They don't think very far ahead. They're just like driven by this idea, and that's where they're going for. And if you ask the tough questions, they're like, well, we don't know. You don't know? You don't have a plan in place?
They'll give you an answer like my prime minister gave during an interview. Justin Trudeau was asked about the Canadian budget, and he said the budget will balance itself. Because that's what my bank account does.
Wow.
I spend like a fucking idiot, and it just replenishes itself. It just balances itself. That's what happened when you don't have the foresight to see the shortcomings in an ideology. You tend to have really bad surprises, and then when you ask your leadership to be accountable for it, they give you bullshit answers. So, because the idea to begin with was flawed, it wasn't questioned. No one put it through the stress test, right? And
nice.
you see that in marketing, even for companies. Sometimes they come out with a pedal that makes fart sounds or meowing.
Oh,
meow. Play the meow pedal, and the foresight is, the novelty of it is going to wear off soon. Is there any longevity to this ideology, to this plan, to this marketing? And the truth is, people talk about it for a very short period of time, and then they move on. And you made a quick, cash grab from it. But then after that, it's like, what's your next big idea? Is it going to be the diarrhea pedal? Is it going to be the constipation pedal? You have to keep, that demographic served. That's what they want from you.
It's the dentist's office noise generator pedal. You play something.
Just a drill. That with a classic fuzz. Awesome.
Yeah. Now we have the Miku stomp, we have the fart pedal, and now we have the fucking cat pedal. And it's weird. When I see this, I see it a lot lately. This meme of Edward Furlong in Terminator 2, where he talks to the Terminator and says, "We're not gonna make it, are we? I mean, like people."
Yeah.
And I think, true. We're not going to make it. Now the newest stupidity that everybody has to ride on is the. Have you seen the Hawk Tour?
Oh fuck!
Why does it's like, it's unbelievable. Now there are so-called memeists. They are creating memes.
Okay.
So like, they're not cineasts, people who create movies. They're memeists. So these people are sitting around all day creating memes. And I have nothing against the art form of memes. I love about them on a daily basis. They're very good. Yeah. It's an art form. It's an online art form. But the problem is, once somebody comes around with something like this sort of American chick that was caught on video saying, you gotta spit on that thing like hot toi.
Yeah, she invented that. Nope, we had never heard of that before.
No. And now people are tattooing this fuck.
Oh,
it's like, yeah.
You know that word viral? Like, it's gone viral?
Yeah.
I have a theory that the reason why we use that word is that we get sick of it really quick. It's gone viral. Hawk to like, okay, guys. So you got a 20-something who just found out how to polish shoes. Big deal. Can we just move the fuck on?
And then I imagine, like, all these guys sitting at home in front of their screens are like, damn, what can I do that, to like benefit? What does it mean, benefit?
To jump on the trend, yeah.
It's not like you can make money with memes. Unless somebody, if somebody listening to this can explain me how you can make money with memes, then please tell me. And then, yeah, I'm gonna be a memeast, whatever. But they're sitting around and creating, like, trying to, what can I do to use the hawk toi movement, and come up with like the next meme around it, or the next thing about it that's gonna go viral. And they sit there and they create something, and then it goes viral, and they sit there, I already have 100 likes, and 20 people commented on it. It's like, really?
Wait until the guitar community goes back to the Carl Martin tuwa and starts to make the tuwa, the hawk tuwa meme.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay, so here's the topic that I had in mind originally for this episode, and it is actually a somebody that one of our viewers suggested. So a viewer suggested topic, and I want to thank Antoine Mictarian for his suggestion, because he was kind of asking, arming a pedalboard, like building a pedalboard, versus buying a device like the FM9, the FM3, the Helix, the Quad Cortex, or what is out there, like debating over one or the other. And it's funny because yesterday I had the same sort of conversation with a buddy of mine that said the same thing, and he actually stated, he said, if you look at some of the price points around pedalboards, like building a pedalboard and buying, let's say, a Quad Cortex, sometimes the pedalboard is significantly more expensive than buying the Quad Cortex. The Quad Cortex comes in at like $16.99, something like that. And you think like, wow, $16.99, that's a heavy price point. Let's kind of build in that you can buy it used, and maybe you land at $12.99 or like $1,300, $1,400 or something like that, if it's in a good state. And that also seems like, wow, $1,400 for like a device that, is essentially like a digital device. But then you look at what it costs to build a decent pedalboard, and that could be 2 times or even more. And don't forget that sometimes you flip pedals. You take this one because a new one came out you like better, and then you sell the other one at a loss, and you add another one. So you have to kind of factor that in as well, kind of calculate that as well into the equation. But yeah,
do you want
let's
to
discuss.
Do you want to take like a pros versus cons approach for the topic?
Yeah, I think it's yeah. Okay, let's
Because we could enumerate like all the pros, and then go through some of the cons, and then kind of give our final thoughts. Because anyone that watches the podcast, you may not know, but I have no fucking idea what we're going to talk about when we do the podcast. So Frank has a pretty big list, but he doesn't write to me the night before like, do your research because I don't want you to look like a fool tomorrow. There's none of that. It's like we get there.
Not true.
Oh, you disagree?
Honestly, when it's something that really needs a lot of research, I'm telling you, stuff like that, it's like, to me, that's like bread and butter topic, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're into gear, you should know that stuff. But for the most part, a lot of our stuff, I don't even research. It's like we talk about it, we go into it, because it's like, when do you have time to search for this shit? Like, let's say you would have written to me yesterday, we're doing the pedalboard thing. I don't know where to start. Well, no, I'd rather shoot from the hip, like we're going to do today, and just go into it. And that's why I was suggesting doing like a pros versus cons, because there's so many points in between too that we have to consider. So let's say for example, I say, all right, we're going to start with the cons of using a traditional pedal board, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say are like the biggest red flags, if you want, like the things that are going to be the toughest for someone that wants to build their own board, whether it's a small one, a medium one, or a really big one? What are some of the key elements that stick out to you?
So first of all, if you regularly play shows, you need to look at something that definitely can handle abuse. And there are pedalboards out there that definitely can take a lot of abuse, especially if you house them in a proper case. But there are other pedalboards out there that I wouldn't take into a touring van at all, or on the stage, where sometimes things are getting hectical and things might break. So it needs to be able to take abuse. That's like the first thing, and that applies to everything around the pedalboard as well. It also applies to the pedals, because when we're talking about price points, it's like, sure, you can build a board for like probably 150 euros if you take, cheap Amazon Chinese firecracker effects and the power supply from the same company. Sure, you can probably land a pedal board for like under 200 euros, and then you're like, nah, I won Quad Cortex, or I won Helix, but your signal integrity is going to be shit. The power supply probably has very poor filtering, and everything that's going on in that power grid wherever you're playing, if it's the rehearsal room or if it's like some venue, is gonna have an impact on your overall sound. So that's one thing. Yeah. And I guess that sums it up, that's what I see as red flags. If you economize or compromise on pedalboard components, you're going to buy twice. You're going to buy, if you're going to buy cheap, you're going to have to buy it twice.
That's right. Yeah. Famous for me quote of a buddy of mine who had a lot of fucking cash. He once told me, I don't have enough money. I'm not rich enough to buy cheap shit. And at the time I didn't get it. But what he was just basically implying is that cheap shit fails you and you're going to have to rebuy it and rebuy it and rebuy it. And when you look at the total cost, you might as well have saved up to get the real shit you needed to begin with.
Yeah.
And I always kind of like that philosophy of save your dollars. So in order to be able to like really summarize where we're going to go with this, I think we should probably set some ground rules. So we have to keep in mind that we're talking gear for gigging musicians. That could be someone who plays in a bar once a month or every week or every other weekend, someone who has a home studio or actually plays in studios. We're talking about people who are going to be investing a given sum, which is going to be a fair chunk of change, towards something that's reliable. So we're not going to be going for the person who's just like amateur playing at home for the fun of it. A Quad Cortex might be overkill for them.
Okay.
So maybe the cheap stuff like you were talking about, maybe that's fine for them. But let's say we're talking about someone who considers themselves at least semi-pro or pro. What are they looking at? So I think you already kind of laid down the groundwork. So we're talking about, really good power supply. That's like super good issue that a lot of people don't think about. But if you don't have a proper power supply, you can run into all sorts of shit during a gig with all the different venues, the lighting system. If they have really bad electrical wiring, like shit that was made back in the 1950s, there's a lot of stuff there to think about. So let's say we're thinking about all of that. What would you say would be the benefit of someone using something like the Quad Cortex or maybe a Kemper or something like that? Something that's more like digital modeling, just grab and go. Like, what are some of the things that stick out to you that would make more sense using that versus a traditional like pedal board?
Well, for starters, you don't have to worry about all of these sort of electrical issues. You don't have to worry about power supply because this thing comes with a power supply that has enough filtering. It's not gonna, influence what's happening. Second, you do not have to be. You're not limited with like, okay, I'm gonna buy pedals that sound a certain way. You're not going to be limited with any sort of musical genre, because essentially these things have a shit ton of amps. They have a shit ton of effects pedals in there, and you can build rigs inside of these things that sound, you can play your rock, blues, show, whatever, but you can also play heavier stuff through it. So there's that, and people always say when they talk about modelers, they're like, there's so many options, all of that stuff is like, it's overwhelming me, like the amount of options that some of these modelers have.
Yeah.
To where I say, yeah, but you don't have to dig so deep. If that was the pet peeve of people when the fractal stuff became more, when the fractal stuff became like more popular, people were like, yeah, it sounds great and it feels great, but there are just too many options in there. So, and I was like, well, then just don't go to the second layer. Just stay on the first layer. Just handle the modeler like you would handle your amp, and you're going to be fine. It's not necessary to dig in too deep into that if you don't know especially if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't know what a treble resistor is in an amp model, then don't fiddle around with that stuff. If you don't know what a high pass and a low pass filter is, then don't fiddle around with it. You didn't fiddle around with it when it was available on your original amp because you didn't open it up, you didn't change things. So
yeah, you didn't mess with the electronics. Yeah.
So there are certain advantages to like a Quad Cortex or a Helix that definitely benefit people who don't know what kind of music they're going to play in their life. And you're not limited. It's not like you're going to, let's say you want a certain pedal that's rarely available. It's not an issue with the Quad Cortex because somebody probably, made a model of it or made a model of it in the Fractal FM3 or FM9. It's not an issue. Now, the other thing is that obviously with these types of devices, in most cases, you're not going to use an amp. You're going to go direct. And going direct is something you cannot do everywhere. Can do it if the venue has a PA system that's suitable. If it's a good PA system. And same applies to your rehearsal room. You need a good PA system to be able to, rehearse in an appropriate manner. Or you got to buy one of these active full range speakers that they're now making for guitar players as well, like Laney and Matrix and whatnot. There are different companies that make them. But yeah, so the benefit is for the price you're paying, you're essentially getting all the pedals you want, all the amps you want, all the cabinets you want, and for the most part, in a very, very high, almost studio-like quality. That's the pro.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I agree with your assessment. If you were to try and find some of the pros of using traditional pedal boards, so let's say you're taking the modeler out of the option, you're going for just straight up analog pedals or digital pedals into an amplifier. What do you think would be the advantage of going that route?
Now it becomes also some sort of a belief question, because I personally believe that your interaction with an analog piece of gear is different than with a digital piece of gear. And while a lot of modelers are able to recreate the sound of certain pedals, I don't believe, and I still haven't heard, that they can recreate the feel of some of those pedals. And we can take a very simple example. There are fuzz pedals out there with germanium transistors. Germanium transistors behavior changes on the temperature, on the situation temperature. Yep. So they're going to behave different if you're in a room that has 10 degrees, than when you're in a room that has 30 plus degrees. And that's something that you can set as a value in a digital representation of that pedal, but it's not something that's going to happen naturally. Now, if all of that is if the effect is something you want or you don't want, that's a different discussion. But it's like, I believe it's the same, that the same applies to some of those overdrives out there, and even to some of the modulation effects out there. So that's one of the things. Your interaction is going to be very different, and then also a lot of the sounds that are happening sometimes happen because you chain up two pedals, and you create a different sort of drive sound.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes you get pairings with pedals that also you can try to recreate them in the digital domain. They're not going to sound the same, So there's a certain type of individualism when it comes to when it comes to pedal boards. And that's something my buddy said as well. It's like pedals are essentially luxury items, in a way, because back then you would have an amp, we would crank it up to a certain amount, and then you would do most of your stuff with the volume knob, and then pedals came along and gave you essentially more options. But I still know people that their basic sound is the sound of an amp that's cranked up to some extent, and then maybe they use a simple booster, to kick the amp into additional overdrive and sustain, and that's it.
Yeah.
They don't need an. So the fact that we have thousands of pedals floating around the market, it's to me is not an indicator that it's certainly necessary to have pedals. It's kind of suggested. It's like, you need that pedal. It's going to give you the sound off. Or you need that pedal. It's the best delay you can get in that price range, blah, 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 blah. But yeah. So, and the other thing that my buddy also said, and I think he's right, people try to kind of individualize themselves and kind of we say like separate them from the other players by having a certain like type of pedals, certain maybe more exclusive pedals.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Maybe limited edition, maybe vintage, maybe hard to get, all of these things. And then like it's kind of a statement. It's kind of a statement.
Yeah.
You go on stage, you unpack your pedal board, and people's like, oh, he has a King of Tone from Analog Man. Oh, look, he has an original fuzz face. Oh, what? He has a mid-60s Vox Wah? Holy shit. So yeah, it's all of these things, and then they're like, look at my pedal board. It's like it's like coming into a restaurant and like putting your Ferrari keys on the table.
I agree. There's definitely that aspect of it, but I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I see your buddy's point. I see your point. The other thing that we have to consider too is that, let's say I've been playing for a long time. I know that I get the best performance out of myself when I use these chosen pedals. So let's say I have a King of Tone, I have a vintage fuzz face and all that stuff, but that's usually what I go to. I have a pretty expensive guitar, so I'm not using some Line 6 guitar with all the different sounds in there, because that would be comparable to something like, let's say, the Quad Cortex, but for guitars, right? You have a guitar where you can do acoustic, nylon, and all this stuff. I'm not using that. I'm using, let's say, I don't know, some vintage Parker guitar or Fender or whatever. And then I have a big Marshall in the back. But that's what I like to play, right? I don't care about the hype. I don't care about the trend. I bought my King of Tone when there wasn't a 4-year list, and all these pedals are not bragging factors. There's just what I've been playing for, let's say, 15 years.
Yeah.
What are the advantages for, let's say, someone who has a setup like this? You were talking about the benefits of something like a Quad Cortex. It's small, it's portable, you got everything you're ever going to be looking for in terms of effects right in there, and you can send it directly to a board. But let's say I'm more of an old school cat. I don't like to deep dive. I don't like the more, I wouldn't say generic, but like more like copy paste aspect of these pedals, right? It's like if I have a tube screamer in my Quad Cortex, Buddy has the exact same tube screamer in his. So we're all using the exact same modeling. Whereas I could be on stage and I find that that particular, let's say, tube screamer model just doesn't sit well with my rig. So I got one that I purchased. I tried a shit ton of them. And now I know I solidified my gear. I know how it responds. And I play very well with it. I feel inspired with it. What happens if you take the same player and you try to convert them to Quad Cortex, and now they feel completely uninspired because they're not getting the same response from the Quad Cortex that they would from an amplifier in the back, right? So there's a lot of things, a lot of parameters, and I think it starts with the need of the player, how inspired they are by the rig that they're playing through, and eventually the cost comes into it. Because if you go, I'm only going to be playing every 2 weekends, I'm playing at this whole bar, it's a jam thing, it's, I'm just doing it for fun until I can go on tour with my band. Do you really want to bring like this huge fucking rig with you? Just a small bar gig that doesn't even pay. It's more like jam kind of thing. So that's where I see maybe you should have something that's more portable. But if you go on tour, let's say with a Quad Cortex, you're going to have to think of a backup. Because if something goes wrong, you lost the entire rig, right? If it's just, it doesn't work, you lost your pedals, you lost your effects, you lost your amplifier. You're not playing. If you have a pedal or set of pedals, you may encounter issues, but if you know it well, you've been playing it for a long time, you might know, oh shit, I'm going to start from the beginning of my signal chain and go through. It might be a bad cable, it might be a battery that's died, maybe something disconnected. But if the same thing happens with your Quad Cortex, you have to send it to a shop because there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to figure this out on your own. So there's a lot of pros and cons there, right? It's like the Quad Cortex fails on you, you're fucked. You gotta get it fixed. But if your pedal board has a mishap, there's a good chance that you can take like 5 minutes and troubleshoot it and figure it out yourself, unless something crucial happened. But that's usually where the guy is going to go, okay, fuck the pedal board. I'm going straight into the amp, and tonight there's not going to be any flanger on this song. But if you lose your Quad Cortex, you're not plugging into anything else. It's like that's your rig. So you better have a backup. So now it's no longer $1,600. You multiply that by 2. And you got to take the time to make sure that all your patches are the same so that, there's no weird discrepancies between both of them. So that becomes quite expensive too, if you think about it. Do you think that would kind of reflect real world scenario, or am I missing something?
No. I think you made some extremely valid points there, especially when it comes to reliability and the plan B sort of approach, because with an analog setup, and even if you have a delay that has like like analog digital and then digital to analog conversion in it because of the effect that it creates, you're still, like, connection wise, you're still in the analog domain. So you're able to like easily bypass a pedal if it doesn't work anymore for some reason. It's just plug and play.
Yeah.
You're not able to do that with a digital device that eventually dies on you or has like a malfunction. Sure, you can shut it down and reset it, probably, but that is going to take some time, and time is not always what you have when you're in a live situation. So that's why a lot of the like sort of pro bands, pro players, they have a backup system. I remember seeing the live rig of Metallica. They even have a backup to the backup. So they had like the XFX XL, I believe, and that had a backup, and then they had a rack with an additional like sort of backup. So they essentially had like a couple of racks sitting there, no amp at all. They had power amps though, because they wanted some sort of like real cabinets on stage. So they had at least some amp thing going on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why these bands, because if something goes wrong, the technician, who is like attend at all times, and following the show, just switches the button, goes to the B rig, and everything is kind of seamless. And I think that's one of the crucial points, apart from like analog being something you can just quickly reroute, or like, what, fuck it, I'm just going straight into the amp and that's that. is the reliability factor of digital, which, I mean, the track record of some of these companies is very, very good. I've never seen... I know that Kemper had some issues in the beginning where for some reason it got stuck. It wouldn't switch rigs anymore. You wouldn't be able to switch stuff. And then you had to reset it. And like restarting a Kemper takes way longer than restarting an XFX. An XFX you can essentially restart in 10 to 15 seconds. With the Kemper, I did it once, took like fucking minute. So
it is fucking long to boot up for sure. And that brings me to another thing that I think we need to focus on is if we look at the analog versus digital aspect. If I'm playing my regular pedal board with analog and digital pedals, I'm not at the mercy of an update. With a digital modeler, oftentimes the companies try to improve the UI, all this different stuff. Yeah. Sometimes they want to give you extra cabinet, extra models. And now if you're a gigging musician, everything is stable and reliable for you. And then they entice you with this new software update. You're at the mercy of whatever's going on with that. If they haven't done the quality control on that update properly, you might lose some patches. It might not even turn on. There might be a fuck ton of things that could go wrong with this new update. And now you got to wait on the next update. But if they're really slow at putting these things out because it's not a critical issue, now you're going to have to revert back to whatever update you had before just to keep it stable. And now you might be really weary of doing updates in the future because you might be like, fuck, man, this is my bread and butter. I can't have these updates fucking up my patches and everything and rerouting shit.
Yeah.
With analog, that's a non-issue. Unless you have like some kind of digital pedal in there that requires that stuff once in a while if you want to get new models. But that's another thing too. For musicians, we need reliability. So usually when we find what works, then we stick with it. If it's pedals, let's say, I don't know, you got some kind of, I'm going to be bashing on tube screamers again, but let's say you got a tube screamer on there. Man, it just doesn't sit in your mix. You can unplug it, take it out, put another pedal and substitute it in there. Another variant on that tube screamer. When you have a modeler, there's one model of that thing. And unless they give you the tweakability to go in there and change parameters, the only pedal I'm aware of that you can do that is would be something like Source Audio, either the Kingmaker, LA Lady, and all those. You can go in the parameters and just change the voicing of your pedal. But unless you can do that with those modelers, those are really the pedals that you got there. And if you're fine with that, then that's absolutely a non-issue because everything is made in that ecosystem to work cohesively together. But if you're more of a tactile person, you need to change that fuzz because right now the amp, like remember Chris Jupiter had said, you bring your amp to a different venue and your amp is no longer biased because you just change the electricity. Yep. So your amp might be reacting differently that night, and now your pedals don't sound the same, so you have to go back in and change that. That might not be an issue with modelers, which is cool. So you always have that stability, but if you're more analog, sometimes you got all these tricky things that can happen with the electricity in the place. I remember playing gigs where I had radio stations coming through, and I had no fucking clue where it was coming through. So I had to unhook everything and just go straight into the guitar amp because I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a shielding thing. I have no fucking clue. But I cannot have this fucking KFM radio coming through my stupid fucking rig when I'm trying to play. Like, no, not happening. And I find that these...
Yeah, and sometimes it's simple acoustics that, the acoustics of a venue that makes you need to change certain settings, and then that on your pedal board, on your analog pedal board, affects other pedals as well. I've seen myself in a situation where whenever I use some sort of an echo or a short delay or something, if I had to adjust because I was maybe going into a different amp or I was in a different venue and there was a different backline. So I kind of reduced the amount of volume coming out of the overdrive or the amount of drive. Suddenly, I would have way less like overall mix of the delay in the signal. So I had to increase that. So there's this thing. There are things that you can adjust very easily especially with your analog rig, and on the digital domain, especially now that we use the touch screens and controlling everything with an application, whatnot, especially with that, it suddenly becomes very complicated.
Yeah, because sometimes on the fly, doing deep dives, because it really depends on the interface of the company, right? So you got some companies where you can deep dive really quickly and just get to what you want. But you got others where the parameters are a little more complicated. And you were talking about the concept of someone understanding what they're doing with these parameters, because it's really deep diving. I mean, you can low pass, you can high pass, you can use different impedance, like with the HX Stomp, you can use different impedance value for your input of your guitar so that the HX Stomp reacts differently. Now, you don't have that with an amplifier. You don't know what the impedance is on the input. You just plug into it. It says high or low, maybe. Or maybe it doesn't have that. And you just plug in, you go, that's what it is. And your pedals will react to that. With the modelers, one of the advantages is that you can just really go into it. But that requires at least basic understanding of the electrical aspects of this. So for someone who's a pro, it doesn't mean they understand all of that shit.
No.
They might be excellent musicians. They're awesome at songwriting, but when it comes to that electrical stuff and the acoustics, they're at a loss. So they might favor something that's super simple as opposed to having something that will give them, option paralysis. And they might go for that. I've seen guitar players, and I know some guitar players, man, they're so knowledgeable, and they get on these devices, all these modelers, and they get killer fucking tones, like awesome tones. And they know what they're doing, and they can squeeze everything that they want out of that rig. But I'm an older cat, and I'm used to the analog part, but I do embrace the digital. It's just I'm trying to balance, navigate the territory. I love the idea of going digital and doing the modeling thing, but sometimes it's that fear of having, let's say, the HX Stomp, for example. You send it to front of house, and the front of house engineer puts phantom power on. All of a sudden, your HX Stomp is fucking fried. It's not made to see 48 volt coming into it, right? So now you have to think more like, okay, am I going to put...
They don't have some kind of, I don't know, like protection diode or something in there?
I know that a lot of people that use the HX Stomp want to put a DI right after, just to make sure that if someone clicks in the 48 volts, it doesn't come into the HX Stomp. Now, I have no experience playing live with it, and I've never done it, but I've seen plenty of people say, no, just get yourself a good DI, so that way you can send a good clean signal out to front of house, and if ever they put phantom power on or anything, you're not gonna, fuck up your HX Stomp.
Right.
I'm sure there's some other units that might not have that issue, but those are still new things that you have to worry about, because if you have a regular rig, phantom power is not an issue for you. You don't think about it because none of it comes into your rig, right? They just put a microphone in front of your amp. That is it.
Yeah.
So, there's I think the problems and the benefits are similar between both rigs, but there's enough differences there that I don't think we can say, and at least that's my opinion on this. We can't say one will replace the other. I think there's still plenty that justifies using one or the other, or a combination of both. I don't know if you see it that way, but I think it's like, if I'm going to be going on tour in another country, and I can't afford to bring the Bad Cat with the 2x12 cabinet and my guitar and a shit ton of pedals, analog pedals, I might go with the HX Stomp that I can fit in my guitar case and just bring that. If I know for sure every venue is going to have a console and it can go straight in, that would make sense. Yeah, am I going to be taking a hit on the experience on stage and all that stuff? Maybe, but I mean, you find your way to pretend that you enjoy the tone, and you work at it a little harder.
So I think that, and the conversation came up because we also talked about the current market situation of things, because right now, for most people, the pedal market is very dead because they're not selling much, because we have certain economical things going on right now preventing us from the discretional spend, because people keeping the money together. And the other thing is there's also a saturation of products on this very small market. We always forget that our industry, in comparison to other industries, although sometimes you walk into a huge store like music store or into a big guitar center and whatnot, and you think, oh, what a huge store, this industry has to be huge. It's not. It's a very, very small industry, and it's a niche industry, and it's an industry that is based on emotional spending, not rational spending. And we were kind of trying to get to the bottom of that, and I was actually bringing up some arguments, stuff that we talked about, made the car comparison. You don't buy a car every year unless you have more money that you can ever eat in your life, and you say, oh, I'm going to buy a new car every year because I like it, It's like, but let's face it, for 99% of the world's population, that's not the case. You buy a car because you need a new car. You don't buy it because the new model comes out next year or this year, and it spends 0.3 liters less gasoline. You don't do that. Yeah. In the same way, you don't buy a new guitar every year. And then he came up with the thing, well, you can buy an affordable guitar, a new affordable guitar every year. And it's like, yeah, what's that going to get you? Like, you're going to have a wall of guitars that each one costs like $300. And then when the point comes that you're like, oh shit, next month, money's going to be really tight, I might have to let go of some of the guitars. And you pick out the two guitars you play the least, and you sell. What are you going to get for them? $150, $180?
That's also the thing too.
That's the thing.
So
that's the sorry. Just to finish this up.
Yeah.
So it's a small industry. It's catering to people that are like emotionally driven to get something, to buy something, and they're gonna have it for a while. In most cases, it's not going to last forever, and they're going to buy the next thing, or, they're changing to another musical genre and they're selling everything. And I've seen I've seen people selling off all the stuff from their pedalboard and going digital, because it's like, 99% of the people in front of the stage don't give a shit. Because they're not concerned at all how the sound is created. They're not sitting there like, oh, this guy plays an original 1981 Tube Screamer. That's why the sound is so crystal clear. And he has the new Hawktois wah-wah pedal.
Right there, the
Hawktois. And that's why he sounds so much closer to the original Hendrix wah sound. Amazing.
Yeah.
It's the 1% in the audience that afterwards takes a look at the pedalboard, like, okay, cool, appreciates the effort of putting this thing together, and then they go their way,
There's two interesting things. I'm going to come back to the previous one that you said, something sparked there. But I remember my dad telling me, he goes, when we were young, back in the 70s, we used to go in a bar, and before the band was on, we'd look at the gear they had, and if we weren't impressed with it, we'd walk the fuck out. So I think that mentality still permeates today, because it's like if you see like some kind of like low brand, like I don't know, like a Line 6 Spider on stage, you're going, nah, fuck, this is not going to be a good show. So you walk out. But if you get in there and there's like, a big Marshall or whatever amp on stage and a really cool, drums and all that, you go, okay, this might be a good show. So we still have that, I think, to a certain degree, because we're a bit like, I wouldn't say gear snobs, but we kind of assess someone's level of skills by what they play. Like if you get in there, you might be fucking shocked to hear someone play like a Squire through a Spider, a Line 6 Spider. You might be shocked because some people manage to squeeze some cool tones, but typically we go, the better the gear, the better the player. And I don't think anyone wants to verbalize it that way, but I think it's ingrained in our psyche. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that you said something about the gear that I think we haven't really talked about, is that, let's say, for example, technology changes with modelers, like let's say every 2 years, not every 2 years, but every 10 years. That means that, let's say you're an Axe FX user. There's another one coming up soon that's going to be even better. So now if you're still playing one of the old ones, it may or may not be supported by the company. So eventually you're going to have to upgrade to a new unit. If you're playing the same pedals, right, with the same amp, there's no need to upgrade, because yes, they will put a different color on the Tolex, or they might have limited edition speaker, whatever anniversary bullshit. But I mean, essentially, if you're playing a JCM 800 and you've been playing that for 20 years and you get it maintained by your tech and everything is operational and you're good to go for another 20 years, there's no need to change your rig. Yeah. Now, if you're playing a digital modeler, the technology changes all the fucking time, exponentially, compared to the more antiquated tube technology we're using. So that means if you're going down this route, you have to accept that maybe the Line 6 pod, the kidney bean one, might not be that hot anymore, and you might have to upgrade. You've been sticking to it, you squeezed every ounce of it, but now it's like it doesn't sound as good as some of the new shit that comes out. And then you buy the new one. Like I bought a Kemper, and after I bought the Kemper, not too long after, the Tone X came out. I was like, fuck. I was scrounging money as much as I could to buy the Kemper, but now the Tone X comes out and it's less expensive, does essentially the same fucking thing. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. If I would have waited 1 fucking week, I could have bought the Tone X instead and saved myself some money. And that's the game I think that's going to be played with the digital thing that we don't have with analog gear, is that technology improves, the size changes, everything is more portable. Look at the little Tone X pedal that they came out with. It looks like the Tumnus. It's super small and it sells out fucking great on the market, because people are like, hey, I don't need the tone capture, I don't need none of that shit. It's more like a player, so put it on my board, there you go. So
that's true.
Yeah, it's the price point is great. The features are great. The sound apparently is really good. I haven't played one. I want to. So that's the race on the digital side, is improving the technology, making it more user-friendly, making it more portable for people, given all the features that they want. Does it have a built-in tuner? Does it have this or that? So that's where it gets fierce. But as soon as someone comes out with something better, with a new technology, the other stuff seems to fall by the wayside. And when you look at the price on the used market, dude, it's not that great. People bought campers for $2,000 and then something else comes in, kills it. Then you see them for $1,000. That's a pretty steep fucking cut on your price, right? As with, let's say you bought a King of Tone for $250, I don't know, 9 years ago. Right now, you can sell it for a pretty fucking big chunk, because there's no new technology that surpasses it. This is going to be a new flavor of it from another company. So those are things I think we still need to keep in mind with this versus that. They're similar. They're going for the same kind of thing. But because of the technology they're using, the approach and the mentality behind it is very different on the part of the companies and also us as consumers. I don't know what you think of that, but
no, I think you're right, especially about the longevity of some of the digital products, because one thing we have to keep in mind, especially with companies like Fractal or Quad Cortex, Neural, in this case, Neural DSP, we have to keep in mind that, yeah, they made a product. Like in the case of Fractal, they made the XFX, then they made the FM series. They, in order to survive, they need to make money. The software updates are always free. They never charge for software updates. So they come in there. When I had an XFX 2, usually one time a month or every 1.5 months, they would come out with a new update for the XFX 2. And they're not charging for these updates. Even when they came out with an entire new firmware, like a new structure of the firmware, like the next generation firmware, they didn't charge for it. So how are they making money? They're forced to come up with a version that has more processing power, more ins and outs. Then everybody was like, hey, you need to make a floor version of this. So they made a floor version of it. Hey, you need to make a version that only has effects. It doesn't have amps, because people like to use your effects library, which is huge. And the quality is, for me, it was always like Eventide level quality, especially the reverbs and delays. But they want to use the original tube amps with your effects in a sort of pedalboard friendly format, so they made that. But if I look at recent years, they're just like, this has more processing. It's all about processing power. And that's how they sell new devices. But to be 100% honest, even nowadays, if you've never played anything modeling related, and somebody presents you an XFX 2 and you play through it, you'd be fucking impressed. And you wouldn't feel the need to buy the new the XFX 3 or like the FM9 or whatever it is, because it's still a very, very impressive product that has a shit ton of amps in there, a shit ton of sounds. So it's not necessary to buy the newest thing. And I believe that that applies to many other things as well. So that's the thing. While pedal companies, there it's kind of a structural thing. Depends on how the pedal company is built. If you look at Analog Man is essentially a 1, maybe 2 people operation, and they build stuff at their own speed, because they have a wait list that's 4 years long now. And people are willing to wait for 4 years, and then they get a notification that says, hey, you're now eligible to buy the King of Tone version 4. What kind of options would you like? That we built into this thing. And they built it, and I don't know what the price point is, but it has to be something like $400 or $500, something like that. And then they ship it out. And it seems like they can survive pretty well on that. Whereas other companies need to, come up with new pedals and new recreations of certain circuits in order to stay relevant and to survive. So, yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum. Everybody wants to make money somehow, and these two types of companies, they do it in very different ways. But I feel that all of this is going to hit a brick wall at some point, and I think we're kind of seeing like the first sort of pieces of evidence that this is going to happen. And the used market is flooded. The used market for stuff right now is absolutely flooded. And because, people look at like guitars, for example, and they're like, look at the pricing of some of the US Strats, and they look at what they can get essentially the same guitar used for like 2/3 of the money. It's like, what is there to think about?
Yeah, there's definitely a level of saturation on the market. So if you're looking at the new stuff and you're looking at the used market, and for the same product, sometimes it's better to go used, but other times the used prices are so inflated that you might as well go new, because now it hasn't been owned by someone who might have fucking Mickey Moused your guitar and changed a bunch of shit and you're unaware of it, right? So you might as well sometimes go new. There was a time where used stuff was better in terms of saving money. So if you wanted to, buy a used Strat, you could buy a 60s or 70s Strat and it wouldn't cost you a huge chunk. But then all these new fads come in and people are like, hey, apparently guitar collectors bought a guitar from that era and they made a shit ton of money on it. So how about we start to inflate our prices on our gear too? And then everybody all of a sudden is a guitar collector, and all the prices on these guitars just fucking skyrocket. And now the used market on that aspect of it, the vintage shit, forget it. Because if some motherfucker out there decides to say, hey, this is the best amp, it's one of those things, it's a top secret. These amps are just like the one you want that's worth thousands of dollars, but this one here is like $1,500. Now that price shoots up. It was like, I got the Vox AC50, great amp, but John Mayer hasn't played it yet, and no one famous has played it yet and said that they're great. But if they do, man, I got it. I'm gonna sell it and buy a house with it.
Yeah.
What the fuck mentality is that? And I find that the guitar players that go for modelers don't have that guitar collector mentality. Usually they're like, oh man, I dialed in this great fucking sound and it works for me. It's all about like the commodity of the gear.
They're not impressed. They're not impressed by voodoo. They're not impressed by the whole voodoo sort of spiel where people tell you that, because this pedal has the magic diodes, hand selected, whatnot, it's going to sound more like the original, blah, 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 blah. They're like, I want something that, I can play in front of my amp in some situations. I want something that I can play directly into my studio monitors or into a PA system. And other than that, I can just, put it into my guitar bag and fly into vacation and play my guitar there as well. And I don't need to carry a shit ton of stuff, That's just, there's a certain convenience factor to it. And people who are into modeling, they're like, and there are even guitar players of some of the newer situations that people look up to who have embraced modeling. People who are like, no, there is nothing better than the warmth and like the moving air of a tube amp, have embraced modeling. Guthrie Govan is playing FM9 on stage and has like some FR cabinets behind him. And this guy definitely is like a total institution when it comes to tone. So,
but he's not that good of a player, though. Have you paid attention to him? It's not like he knows what the hell he's talking about.
Matteo Mancuso is playing Line 6 Helix stuff, So,
and he sounds fucking fantastic.
Yeah, this guy sounds and plays fantastic. So.
But there could you imagine if you plugged into an analog rig? It sounds so much better. All that digital stuff is just ruining his tone.
In the end, if we want to summarize it, I'm a big fan. Yep. I'm a big fan of the fact that everybody can spend their money for whatever the fuck they want. They can, if you have the money to spend it on a top of the line pedalboard. You buy your Schmidt-Array pedalboard that is like that alone with a case is like $1,300 at least, and then you get yourself a gig rig switcher with like all the power system and whatnot. You'll get that, and then you buy all the boutique pedals and all the vintage pedals you can find, and then you have a pedalboard that is going to cost, I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 euros because you have the money for it. Go for it, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Okay.
Just do it. And if you're on the other end of that spectrum and you're like, I want something that's portable and I don't care about all that voodoo shit, and you don't want to spend all that money but still have like decent tone, then go for it. It's your money. It's your money.
Yep.
You choose how to spend it, and yeah.
My outlook on this particular topic is similar to you. What I would say maybe is different is that you have to ask yourself the question whether you are forced to choose one or the other. If you're not, and you know that you have an inclination towards maybe digital more than analog, maybe you feel guilty for going all in on digital, and you still have the analog stuff, but you never play it. Maybe then you can start to work on your biases and ask yourself, it's like, okay, let's say I have the Kemper Profiler, or I have the HX Stomp, or whatever you're using. And that's what you're using like 95% of the time, but your friends are bugging you about it. It's like, using digital, but you're enjoying it. You love it. Why overthink things, right? This is what you love to play. You shouldn't overthink it because there are trends on the market, because there's some kind of pressure, as if like, if you want to be considered a real pro, you have to use this specific gear. There's a lot of antiquated mentalities when it comes to rig, and if we can do away with them and just look at what is best for the individual, not for the whole community, we're not thinking about like the future of guitar. You're thinking about right now, what are your needs? So let's say someone comes to me and says, John, I just can't see myself forking out money for a tube amp. I'm going to have to fix it. I'm going to have to buy tubes constantly and all this shit. What would you recommend? I would go 100% and tell them, just get the HX Stomp. At that price point, you can grab a second one, and you're still well under the price of, let's say, buying a Kemper or something like that, right? So now you got two. All you have to do now, which is going to be maybe equivalent to knowing how to wire your guitar pedal, where you would have to, run your lines and have all your cables and all this shit. The equivalence to that would be to make sure that if you make any modification to, let's say, the HX Stomp, that's your main one, let's say the A rig, you're going to have to copy that on the B rig so that you have consistency. So that way, if anything happens live, you can grab rig B, just plug it in, and there you go. That would be my approach to it. I would say keep it portable, keep it flexible where you have the options. But what I love about the Line 6 stuff is that you can do the deep dive, but if you want, you can be on the surface. So you click a pedal, you click the little black button, you turn your gain down or whatever, and it's easy to navigate. So if you're looking for that quick, easy, super convenient and has great sound, I would go with a rig like that. Now, if you're more traditional and you're like, I play a gig once a month, everyone's old school, big fucking rigs, and we just put microphones in front of stuff, I might not go HX Stomp, because in that environment, that wouldn't thrive. So I would have to use some kind of FR kind of rig so I could keep up with everybody. But I think the idea of not overthinking pedals, you can see there's a lot of consumerism behind me, but as soon as I get to Canada, I'm putting a lot of that shit for sale, because I'm trying to come back to this concept of I don't need all this rig just to make videos. There are other ways around it. So I'm going to keep the best stuff just for myself, but I do intend to join a band at some point, and I really am capitalizing on getting myself a second HX Stomp.
Okay.
because of that concept. I love the idea that I can go to a bar in Edmonton and they have, front of house, and I don't have to worry about having an amp on stage. That's what I would go with.
Yeah.
All the pedals are there. I don't need 1,000 switching system. I don't need MIDI. I don't need any of that stuff. So if you're old school cat trying to get into the digital stuff, I think that's a great way to do it. I'm seeing the shortcomings of the analog stuff, especially that we mentioned that in the future, who the fuck is going to fix your tube amp? No.
Yeah.
So there's way more chances that you can bring in your HX stomp to some technician, and even if they're not qualified to operate it, they're going to be like, oh, I know what that part is. I put my sensors on this. Okay, that's the issue. I'm going to call the company, see what they tell me. Okay, I'm just going to change this chip in there, and we're all good to go.
Exactly.
That's probably what it's going to look like in the future. So that's my thought on this. I don't think there's a good versus a bad. Like, we did enumerate all the pros and cons, but at the end of the day, much like pedals, like your buddy was saying, it's all personal. If you need something like this where it's more tactile, maybe you go the way of a more analog traditional rig. But if you don't need that, you're not going to be fucking around pedals all day, all evening long. You just need like maybe 1 or 2 core tones. Maybe something super simple that sounds great is the way to go, and it's not going to cost you a fortune to have a B rig just in case anything fails, because we don't always have techs, right?
No.
Most of us don't.
No, it's true. It's true. Great. We've passed the 2 hours slightly. And I think it's a good way. It's a good way to end this episode. If you like the content that we create, if you like the stuff we talk about, then consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell icon. Remember, this is free. Doesn't cost you anything, but it's going to make us heavy. It's going to enable us to get more exclusive guests in the future. And we are going to have a guest next week. And I'm going to reveal who it is because he made it that far. So next week's episode, we are going to talk to Henning Pauli, who also goes by the name of HP42. Who is, if you are into gear YouTube, you definitely have heard of him or know him. If not, chime into the next episode, and he's definitely a funny guy and controversial at times, so it's gonna be fun to talk to him.
Yeah, and it looks like sometimes we are controversial. So no, that should be funny. Also, I want to add one last thing. We haven't had time to do the draw again for the Warlow, the pink Warlow. But at this rate, the channel has grown so fast that we might have to do the Warlow plus the other pedal that we wanted to do at 500 because we are approaching it. So we will do the draw. I don't know if in terms of time, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it next week or if this is going to go a little further in the future.
Let's do it. Yeah, you know what? Let's do it next week together with Henning.
Yep.
I'm going to set up I need to do another export of the subscribers. That was like super technical if you wanted to have it like done in an effective way. But yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put them into the random generator, leaving out some people like that are subscribed to us that cannot participate, friends and family, and then obviously Chris Jupiter.
Yeah,
and we do it next week together with Henning.
Perfect.
Sounds like a plan.
Done deal.
So all that remains is to wish you guys a great rest of the week, great weekend. And we are going to talk to you and be back for the next episode. Until then, cheers.